Welcome to Tales from Sector 9, your portal to immersive sci-fi audio stories. If you enjoy deep space action, rogue AIs, and conspiracy theories, you're in the right place. Tap like and subscribe to keep the adventures coming. Drop a comment and tell us where in the galaxy you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare for tonight's story. The First Solari. The acrid scent of ozone and shattered permacrete was the first layer of 7-year-old Kira's world. She pressed herself deeper into the jagged crevice of what was once a meditation hall on Atreus Station, a place whispered to be a sanctuary. Now, it was a tomb under siege. The rhythmic, menacing thud of magnetic boots on the plasteel deck plating vibrated through her small bones. Imperial forces, clinical and brutal. Their crimson helmet lenses like the eyes of predatory insects swept across the ruins. She'd watched them dismantle her home, piece by agonizing piece, the Jedi Masters, who had seemed like ancient immovable trees, falling like brittle timber. Their lightsabers, once vibrant beacons, lay extinguished, their kyber crystals perhaps already plundered. A shadow, blacker than the smoke-choked corridors, fell over her hiding place. The air grew cold, not with the vacuum of space that licked at the station's breached hull, but with a palpable, soul-chilling dread. A rhythmic, amplified rasp of breath announced him before he came into view. Darth Vader. His form was a monument to terror, obsidian armour gleaming dully in the emergency lights. He paused, his helmet tilting almost imperceptibly. Kira squeezed her eyes shut, a useless defence against the abyss. He knew. He wasn't even looking for survivors, not really. This was a routine sweep, an extermination protocol. Yet, as his gloved hand reached out, not with a weapon, but with an unnerving stillness, Kira felt a pull, an echo in the force that resonated with a strange, terrifying familiarity within her. He sensed it too, a raw, untamed power, a supernova of potential compressed into her tiny frame. The Atreus enclave had been fading long before the Empire's fist closed around it. The Masters, repositories of esoteric force knowledge that diverged from the mainstream Jedi Order, had grown frail, their connection to the living force thinning like ancient tapestries. They had specialized in understanding the force's more ambiguous aspects, its potential for hybrid expressions that bordered on what the Council might have deemed heretical. They had foreseen a shadow, but not its all-consuming totality. The Empire hadn't just found them, it had snuffed out a flickering candle. Vader's decision was an anomaly, a deviation from the rigid calculus of Sith doctrine. He should have extinguished her, or, at best, delivered her to his master, a new plaything for Palpatine's dark designs. Instead, as he looked down at the trembling child covered in the dust of her fallen guardians, something shifted within the ravaged core of Anakin Skywalker. He saw not just a tool, but perhaps a different kind of legacy, a desperate, twisted echo of a past he had murdered. He reached down, his armoured fingers surprisingly gentle as they closed around her arm. "You will come with me," the vocoder hissed, the sound less a command than a grim pronouncement of fate. 5 years melted away in the volcanic inferno of Mustapha's largest moon, Thyrsus, a desolate rock cloaked in perpetual twilight and sulphuric haze. Within a clandestine facility, carved deep into obsidian mountains, Kira, now 12, moved with a lethal grace that belied her age. The air in the training chamber was superheated, smelling of scorched metal and the faint metallic tang of ozone from her practice bolts. Vader, a silent, omnipresent titan, observed. His tutelage was a crucible. He forced her to unlearn the passive meditations of the Atreus Masters, replacing them with a dynamic, aggressive channeling of the Force. He taught her Jedi forms, the elegant dance of Sorosu, the acrobatic whirls of Ataru, but then he would shatter their purity, demanding she integrate the brutal efficiency of Gem So. the raw, overpowering strikes favoured by the Sith. Her lightsaber, a training blade that hummed with a contained, unstable energy, became an extension of a will forged in conflict. She learned to build it, to tune its dissonant crystal, a fractured stone he'd given her, hinting it was from a place of great pain. Compassion is a vulnerability, Vader's synthesized voice would echo in the sparring chamber, even as he guided her through intricate healing trances, forcing her to mend shattered droid limbs with the Force, to feel the flow of energy, to understand its restorative power. Yet, you must understand it to exploit it in your enemies. He taught her to meditate amidst a cacophony of simulated battle sounds, to find her center in the heart of chaos. He showed her how to leash her fury, to make it a weapon, precise and devastating, not a consuming fire. It was a curriculum of contradictions, a tapestry woven from light and shadow, designed to create something entirely new. The first true signs of her prodigious, perhaps unprecedented abilities manifested not in combat, but in stillness. During a deep meditation exercise, one designed to expand her senses beyond the facility, Kira's consciousness had unexpectedly breached the confines of Thyrsus. For a fleeting, terrifying moment she had felt the galaxy, a chorus of a billion minds, a tidal wave of emotion, joy, sorrow, fear, love, washing over her. She felt the distant, cold ambition of an old man on Coruscant, the simmering rage of her master standing beside her, the nascent hope of a hidden rebellion on a far-flung world. The input was overwhelming, nearly shattering her focus. When she gasped, returning to the stark reality of the training room, Vader's helmet was tilted, a silent acknowledgement of a threshold crossed. Her range, her sensitivity, was beyond anything he had anticipated. Vader's private chambers within the Thyrsus facility were a sanctum of obsidian and cold steel, a reflection of the man himself. Yet, hidden behind a nondescript panel, Kira discovered a small alcove, more library than vault, containing a collection of ancient data scrolls and flimsy-bound texts, relics salvaged from a fallen galaxy. She was drawn to them, an instinctive hunger for knowledge that her master had, perhaps deliberately not entirely suppressed. With trembling fingers she unrolled fragile scrolls, their script archaic, their aura humming with the echoes of forgotten eras. Here she pieced together a fractured mosaic of the old Republic, its millennia of complex history, its philosophical debates, its vibrant cultures. She read of the Clone Wars, not the sanitized Imperial version that painted the Jedi as traitors, but first-hand accounts filled with heroism, tragedy, and the creeping shadow of deceit that had ultimately consumed the galaxy. Most poignantly, she devoured the true history of the Jedi Order, their triumphs, their failings, their deep commitment to peace, and their devastating near-total annihilation. It was a narrative starkly at odds with Vader's curt, dismissive pronouncements. One cycle, deep into her clandestine studies, the hiss of Vader's respirator made her jump. He stood in the doorway, a monolith of disapproval, the scrolls illuminated in the crimson glow of his saber, which he hadn't ignited, yet its presence was a palpable threat. "What are you doing?" His voice was colder than the vacuum outside. "Learning," Kira replied, her voice small but defiant, clutching a scroll describing the philosophical schisms that led to the first Sith. "You learn what I permit you to learn," Vader retorted, his unseen gaze seemingly boring into her. "These are relics of a failed past filled with lies and misguided sentiment." "Is truth a lie if it's uncomfortable?" she dared to ask, the question hanging heavy in the sterile air. This was their first significant conflict, a crack in the carefully constructed reality he had built around her. He didn't punish her physically, but the ensuing debates were intense. Vader dissecting the Jedi's failures with surgical precision, Kira, armed with newfound knowledge, challenging his interpretations. It was during this period of intellectual sparring that Commander Thane was introduced into her cloistered world. Thane was a rarity in the Imperial hierarchy, sharp, impeccably discreet, and possessing an unnerving ability to navigate Vader's volatile moods. He was the Sith Lord's designated liaison for the Thyrsus project, a man who brought supplies, obscure technological components, and, Kira suspected, relayed carefully filtered reports to unseen masters. Thane's visits were infrequent, his presence always stiff and formal, yet his observant, intelligent eyes seemed to register everything, including Kira's growing intellectual curiosity and her unique bond with Vader. He was a conduit to the outside galaxy, a galaxy Kira was beginning to understand was far more complex than she'd been led to believe. By 16, Kira was a paradox of deadly grace and burgeoning power. Her abilities had begun to manifest in ways that defied the neat categorizations of Jedi or Sith dogma. During a particularly brutal sparring session with combat droids programmed with advanced algorithms, a stray blaster bolt had struck her arm, searing through her training tunic. Instinctively, she reached out with the Force, not just to dull the pain, but to mend. A faint golden light enveloped her wound, and the flesh began to knit with astonishing speed. Simultaneously, a surge of unexpected fury at the droid's relentless assault caused crackling blue force lightning, a power Vader had only just begun to introduce her to erupt from her other hand, reducing the machine to molten slag. Healing and destruction unleashed in the same breath. Vader, observing from his customary position in the shadows, remained silent, but Kira felt a flicker of something akin to awe, quickly suppressed, emanate from him. The incident amplified the questions that had been simmering within her for years. "Who were my parents?" she asked Vader one cycle, after a meditation session, where fragments of unfamiliar faces and alien landscapes had haunted her. "Why was I on Atreus Station? What is the Empire truly beyond the propaganda you feed me?" Vader for the first time seemed to wrestle with his response. He paced the obsidian floor, the rhythmic rasp of his respirator the only sound. Finally, he offered her carefully curated fragments of truth, laced with manipulation. "The Jedi Order was corrupt and crumbling," he stated, his voice devoid of inflection. "Your parents were members of that order. They, like the others at Atreus, were too weak to protect you, too blinded by their dogma to see the galaxy changing. They abandoned you to your fate. The Empire, I saved you. I offered you strength, purpose." He gave her no names, no specifics, just enough to feed her sense of abandonment by the Jedi and foster a twisted gratitude towards him and, by extension, the Empire. It was a potent narrative, and for a time, it held. Her first genuine mission off Thyrsus was presented as a test of this loyalty. She was to infiltrate a smuggler's den on the lawless moon of Nar Shaddaa, a neon-scarred den of pirates and spice runners. Her objective: retrieve a stolen Imperial datapad containing sensitive schematics for a new hyperdrive inhibitor. Vader provided her with civilian attire, a modified blaster, and minimal intelligence. Use your training, improvise, do not fail. Nar Shaddaa was a sensory overload, a chaotic symphony of alien languages, garish holograms, and the pervasive stench of unrefined fuel and exotic spices. Kira, accustomed to the sterile silence of Thyrsus, or the muted grandeur of Vader's fortress, found it both repulsive and strangely exhilarating. She moved through the thronged alleyways like a wraith, her heightened senses sifting through the noise, her hybrid combat skills allowing her to neutralize threats with an almost casual efficiency that unsettled even the hardened denizens of the smuggler's moon. The mission was a success. the datapad retrieved with cold precision. But the experience, the brief immersion in a wider, messier galaxy, planted new seeds of doubt and a yearning for something beyond the shadows of Mustafar. Across the galaxy, within the obsidian spires of the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine felt a tremor in the Force. It was not the familiar chaotic surge of a nascent Jedi, or the clumsy ambition of a dark side acolyte. This was something different, a powerful, controlled presence that resonated with an unusual harmony of light and shadow, yet it was infuriatingly elusive, hidden from his otherwise near-omniscient gaze. It was like a new star igniting in a well-mapped constellation, unexpected and potentially disruptive. He summoned Darth Vader. The towering Sith Lord knelt before the Emperor's throne, the vast chamber amplifying Palpatine's withered rasp. "There is a vergence in the Force, Lord Vader," Palpatine began, his yellow eyes gleaming with malevolent curiosity. "A nexus of power I cannot precisely locate, yet its ripples are distinct. Have you encountered any unusual Force signatures in your excursions?" Vader remained kneeling, his helmet obscuring any reaction. "The galaxy is vast, Master. Remnants of the Jedi still flicker and die in the outer systems. Perhaps it is one of them, flaring brightly before its end." His response was measured, designed to deflect. He knew, with a certainty that chilled even his own ravaged core, that Palpatine was sensing Kira. Her growth had become too profound to remain entirely cloaked. "Perhaps," Palpatine mused, unconvinced, "but this feels cultivated, stronger. Continue your sweeps. Report any anomalies, no matter how insignificant they may seem. Such power, if left untended, could become a threat. Or," his lips twisted into a predatory smile, "a most valuable asset properly guided." The Emperor's dismissal was a cold command. Vader knew his time was running out. Palpatine's suspicion, once aroused, was a relentless force. He had managed to shield Kira for over a decade, a secret kept even from his own master, a feat in itself. But her burgeoning power was a beacon. Unbeknownst to either Sith, Kira, back on Thyrsus, was experimenting with the long-range emotional sensing she had first stumbled upon years ago. She'd been attempting to reach out, to touch the distant stars, when a sliver of the psychic tension between Vader and Palpatine had brushed against her consciousness. It was fragmented, distorted by distance and the powerful shielding around the Emperor, but she caught the chilling undercurrent, a powerful presence, hidden, threat, asset. The words echoed in her mind, coalescing into a terrifying realization. She wasn't just Vader's apprentice, she was his secret. A secret the most powerful being in the galaxy was beginning to sniff out. The sterile safety of Thyrsus suddenly felt like a beautifully crafted cage, its door slowly creaking open to reveal the wolves outside. The air in Vader's private meditation chamber on Thyrsus was thick with an unspoken dread. The usual sterile coldness felt amplified, the shadows deeper. Kira stood before her master, no longer a child but a young woman forged in a unique fire, her Force signature a complex symphony of carefully controlled energies. "The Emperor suspects," Vader stated, his vocoder betraying no emotion, yet Kira, attuned to his presence for over a decade, felt the subtle undercurrent of grim urgency. "He senses your power. He will not rest until he finds its source." Kira's heart, usually steeled by years of brutal training, hammered against her ribs. "He will try to destroy me?" "Or worse," Vader rumbled, "attempt to break you, to twist you into another of his mindless weapons. He cannot abide a power he does not control, especially one that blends the disciplines he has worked so hard to keep separate." Then came the pronouncement, the true purpose of this chilling revelation. "There is a way," Vader continued, his gaze, though hidden, piercing. "A rebel cell, operating with surprising effectiveness in the mid-rim, has acquired a device of ancient origin. They call it the Void Resonator. Our intelligence suggests it is a weapon capable of disrupting, even permanently severing, an individual's connection to the Force. Kira recoiled internally. Such a weapon was an abomination, a threat to every living being touched by the Force, regardless of allegiance. The Emperor is aware of its existence, though not its precise location. He seeks it for obvious reasons. If he acquires it before we do, he could use it to neutralize any potential rival, including you. Vader paused, letting the implication sink in. You will retrieve this device. You will bring it to me. This mission, if successful, will serve two purposes. It will place a powerful tool in our hands, one that could be instrumental in reshaping the galaxy. And, he added, a subtle shift in his tone, it will prove your loyalty, your strength, beyond any doubt. It may even convince the Emperor that your unique development is an asset to be cultivated under my direct supervision, rather than a threat to be extinguished. Kira absorbed his words. The logic was cold, calculating, yet it offered a sliver of hope, a path forward. Her freedom, her very survival, seemed to hinge on this single, perilous assignment. She thought of the Emperor's cold touch she'd felt across the galaxy, the suffocating weight of his interest. She thought of Vader, her jailer, her mentor, the only constant in her fragmented life. If this was the price of securing her existence, of perhaps one day understanding her place in this vast, hostile galaxy, she would pay it. I accept the mission, Kira said, her voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. She would prove her loyalty. She would secure her future, or so she believed. The journey to the Syria system was undertaken in a nondescript, heavily modified light freighter, stripped of any Imperial markings and equipped with sophisticated sensor-baffling technology. Vader had provided Kira with a new identity. Senna, a former Imperial logistics officer who had supposedly defected after witnessing one too many atrocities in the Outer Rim. The cover story was thin, but her innate ability to project conviction, a byproduct of her unusual Force training, would be its strongest bulwark. Syria, a pastoral world known for its serene plains and the pacifistic nature of its dominant species, the Syrians, seemed an unlikely hub for a rebel cell possessing such a dangerous artifact. Yet, Vader's intelligence, gleaned from a deep-cover operative now presumed dead, was specific. The cell, calling themselves the Guardians of the Horizon, operated under the guise of a remote agricultural collective. Kira, cloaked in the drab utilitarian garb of a wayward spacer, landed her ship at a dusty, windswept outpost on the planet's least populated continent. Making contact was deceptively simple. A coded phrase, whispered in a dimly lit cantina frequented by off-world traders and disillusioned locals, led to a tense, blindfolded journey in the back of a repulsor lift truck. When the blindfold was finally removed, she found herself in a hidden warren of tunnels beneath a sprawling grain silo. The air hummed with quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the brutal order of Imperial installations. Before her stood Captain Zara Tate, a woman whose weathered face and piercing blue eyes spoke of countless battles and unwavering resolve. Beside her, a young, dark-haired man with an easy smile and intense, intelligent eyes watched Kira with open curiosity. This was Davin, a former Corellian senator's son, now a key strategist for the cell. "Senna," Captain Tate said, her voice raspy but firm. "We heard you were looking for a way to hit the Empire where it hurts. We can offer that, but trust is earned here." Kira, or rather Senna, played her part, recounting her fabricated disillusionment with Imperial cruelty. She spoke of wanting to make a difference, to fight for a galaxy free from tyranny. The words felt alien in her mouth, echoes of the forbidden Jedi scrolls she had once devoured. The rebels listened, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and caution. Kira found their earnestness, their unshielded hope profoundly unsettling. Her training had prepared her for duplicity, for violence, for the cold calculus of power. It had not prepared her for genuine kindness, for the quiet idealism that radiated from these individuals. They spoke of freedom, of protecting the innocent, concepts Vader had dismissed as sentimental weaknesses. As she navigated their questions, weaving her carefully constructed lies, a strange dissonance began to build within her. The enemy, it seemed, had a human face, and it was looking at her with an unnerving degree of warmth. Days bled into weeks. Kira, as Senna, integrated herself into the fabric of the Horizon's Edge, the name the rebels had given their hidden sanctuary and their primary starship, a battered but beloved Corellian corvette. She participated in supply runs, helped maintain their aging equipment, and listened. She listened to stories of imperial oppression, worlds strip-mined into desolation, families torn apart by stormtrooper raids, cultures systematically erased. These weren't abstract political grievances. They were raw, personal wounds, recounted with a quiet sorrow that resonated far more deeply than any of Vader's pronouncements on galactic order. She found herself drawn to Davin. His idealism wasn't naive. It was tempered by loss and a fierce intellect. He had abandoned a life of privilege on Corellia after Imperial forces had brutally suppressed a peaceful protest his father had supported, leading to his family's ruin. He saw the rebellion not just as a military campaign, but as a fight for the soul of the galaxy. He would spend hours discussing philosophy, history, the ethics of their struggle, often inviting Senna to share her perspectives. Kira, relying on the forbidden knowledge gleaned from Vader's scrolls, found herself engaging in debates that mirrored those she had had with her master, but from an entirely different vantage point. "Power without empathy is tyranny, Senna," Davin said one evening, as they watched Syria's twin moons rise over the plains. "The Empire has forgotten that, if they ever knew it. We fight so that one day, no one has to choose between safety and their conscience." His words, and the open camaraderie of the crew, chipped away at the armour around Kira's heart. Captain Tate, initially wary, began to treat her with a gruff affection, recognising her skills and her quiet intensity. A young Twi'lek pilot named Lyra shared stories of her homeworld's exploitation, her laughter infectious despite the hardship she'd endured. These were not the faceless rebels Vader had described, not the chaotic anarchists of Imperial propaganda. They were people, driven by conviction, by love, by a desperate hope for something better. The internal conflict was a raging storm. Her mission, her loyalty to Vader, the ingrained lessons of survival, all screamed at her to remain detached, to exploit their trust. Yet, every act of kindness, every shared story, every glimpse of their unwavering courage made the thought of betraying them more abhorrent. She was an assassin cloaked in the guise of a refugee, a Sith-trained operative masquerading as a freedom fighter. It was Davin who, unknowingly, delivered the most potent blow to her resolve. He spoke of the Void Resonator, his voice hushed with a mixture of awe and fear. "It's a terrible power, Senna. We only acquired it as a last resort. Our scholars believe it was an ancient weapon, perhaps from the time of the first conflicts between the Jedi and those who fell to darkness. We would only ever consider using it against the Sith, against beings like Vader or the Emperor, if all other hope was lost. To sever their connection to the darkness that fuels them, it's a desperate measure, but some believe it's the only way to truly stop them without becoming monsters ourselves." His words hit Kira with the force of a physical blow. The weapon she was sent to steal, the device Vader coveted, was intended by these rebels not as a tool of indiscriminate destruction, but as a targeted defense against the very forces that had shaped her. The neat lines of her mission, of good and evil as defined by her master, blurred into an agonizing shade of grey. Driven by a gnawing unease and the need to understand the full scope of her situation, Kira used her access within the rebel cell to delve into their secure databanks. Her official pretext was researching Imperial fleet movements, a task Davin had readily assigned her, trusting her supposed past as an Imperial logistics officer. Her true objective was far more personal. She searched for any mention of Atrius Station, the name a ghost from her earliest, most terrifying memories. The rebel network, though less sophisticated than the Empire's, was surprisingly extensive, drawing on fragmented records, Jedi archives smuggled out during the Purge, and first-hand accounts from survivors. After days of sifting through encrypted files and cross-referencing obscure historical logs, she found it. A heavily corrupted data packet tagged with multiple security warnings, titled simply Atrius Special Protection Protocol. Her blood ran cold. With trembling hands, she initiated the decryption sequence, her fingers flying across the console, using bypass codes and slicing techniques Vader himself had taught her. Skills meant to dismantle Imperial security now turned towards unravelling her own past. The files were fragmented, damaged by time and conflict, but what she pieced together painted a devastating picture. Atrius Station wasn't just a fading enclave, it was a dedicated sanctuary, specifically designed to shield and nurture children with unique force potentials. Children like her, whose abilities didn't fit neatly into traditional Jedi or Sith paradigms. The Masters there had been tasked with protecting these younglings, guiding their development, and crucially hiding them from the rising darkness they had foreseen. Her parents hadn't abandoned her. They had entrusted her to these guardians. Then she found the names: Jedi Master Leora Vel and Knight Kaelin Atrius, her parents, prominent members of this specialized Jedi sect, both renowned for their unorthodox understanding of the Force and their unwavering commitment to protecting its diverse expressions. And beneath their names, a final, chilling entry: Casualties, Atrius Perimeter Defense, Last Stand, Against, Skywalker. The name hit her with the force of a physical concussion. Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, the hero with no fear, the Jedi prodigy who had fallen, who had become Darth Vader. The truth, stark and undeniable, crashed down upon her. Vader hadn't saved her. He had orphaned her. He had slaughtered her protectors, her parents' allies, possibly her parents themselves. The man who had raised her, trained her, who had become the central pillar of her existence, was the architect of her deepest trauma. He hadn't taken her as an act of mercy or even pragmatic asset acquisition. He had taken her, she now suspected with a chilling certainty, as a twisted form of redemption, a perverse attempt to replace what he had destroyed, to mould a new creation in his own image from the ashes of his past sins. The scrolls she'd read, the history she'd consumed, now felt like a cruel, elaborate lie by omission. Vader hadn't just hidden the truth. He was the truth she'd been seeking in its most horrifying form. The revelation of Vader's ultimate betrayal was a seismic shock, threatening to shatter Kira's carefully constructed psyche. Yet, years of brutal conditioning, of learning to compartmentalize emotion and focus on the objective, held her together. The mission, the void resonator. It was still the immediate imperative, though its purpose in her mind had twisted into something far more complex than loyalty or survival. Perhaps, she thought with a cold fury, it could be a tool against him. Despite the turmoil, or perhaps because of it, she moved with chilling precision. Her plan to acquire the resonator was a masterpiece of infiltration, drawing on every facet of her hybrid training. The device was kept in the most secure part of the Horizon's edge, a vault protected by both advanced technological safeguards, laser grids, pressure sensors, sonic dampeners, and, more uniquely, force-sensitive resonance locks designed by Syrian artisans, keyed to specific emotional signatures of peace and tranquility, a defense against brute force or dark side intrusion. Kira, the perfect synthesis of Jedi subtlety and Sith ruthlessness, was uniquely equipped to bypass both. She moved through the ventilation shafts like a phantom, her force-enhanced senses mapping every patrol route, every electronic pulse. She used Jedi meditative techniques to calm her heart rate, to project an aura of serenity that fooled the biological scanners and the outer layers of the force-sensitive locks. Then, with a burst of focused, controlled aggression, a technique Vader had drilled into her for overriding obstinate mechanisms, she overloaded the internal circuitry of the tech-based defences. The vault door hissed open. The void resonator pulsed with a soft internal light, its alien geometry both beautiful and unsettling. It was smaller than she expected, a multifaceted crystalline artifact suspended in a stasis field. As her fingers closed around its cool surface, a wave of conflicting energies washed over her, a deep hum of potential, both for utter negation and, strangely, for immense amplification. "Senna, what are you doing?" Kira froze. Davin stood in the vault doorway, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He held a datapad, likely containing the Vel'Atrius files she had accessed. His eyes, usually so warm, were now filled with a pain that lanced through Kira's own shattered composure. He knew, or at least he knew she was not who she claimed to be. There was no time for explanation, no room for the burgeoning empathy she felt for him. Her training took over. "I need this, Davin," she said, her voice devoid of the false warmth of Senna. "You're with them, aren't you? With the Empire?" His voice cracked. A silent alarm triggered by the vault's breach began to chime softly, escalating. Guards would be there in moments. Kira moved, a blur of motion. Davin, despite his shock, reacted, attempting to block her path, to shout a warning. The ensuing confrontation was brutal and swift. Kira didn't want to hurt him, but her imperative was absolute. She disarmed him with a series of precise strikes, her movements a disorienting blend of Jedi deflection and Sith aggression. He was no match for her. A focused force push sent him sprawling, his head connecting with the bulkhead. He lay still. She didn't check if he was alive. She couldn't afford to. Grabbing the resonator, she fled, alarms now blaring throughout the facility. The cries of betrayal from the rebels, the people she'd come to know, perhaps even care for, echoed behind her, a searing indictment. The perfect assassin had completed her mission, but in doing so had irrevocably shattered any semblance of the person she might have become. Kira's escape from Syria was a desperate, adrenaline-fueled flight. She piloted her cloaked freighter through a gauntlet of hastily scrambled rebel fighters, their comm channels crackling with accusations and Captain Tate's furious, heartbroken commands. "Traitor! We trusted you." The words were barbs, each one finding its mark in her already fractured conscience. She pushed the ship to its limits, its modified engines screaming as she plotted a series of erratic hyperspace jumps, aiming for the chaotic anonymity of the outer rim. She was now an enemy to all. The rebels, understandably, would hunt her relentlessly, viewing her as an imperial spy who had committed the ultimate betrayal. And the Empire? What would Vader think? Monitoring her progress from his obsidian fortress on Mustafar, Vader felt a complex surge of emotions. Pride, cold and sharp, at her successful acquisition of the resonator and her ruthless efficiency. But also a flicker of concern. Her methods had been more overt than he had anticipated. The rebel cell wasn't just infiltrated, it was shattered, its leadership likely compromised. She had exposed herself, and by extension, risked exposing him and his long-held secret. Emperor Palpatine's network of spies and shadowy agents, always vigilant, would also be stirring. The Void Resonator was too significant an artifact to remain a clandestine prize for long. Whispers of its theft and of a uniquely skilled operative involved would undoubtedly reach Coruscant. Palpatine's own hunters, distinct from Vader's direct command structure, would soon be on her trail, driven by the Emperor's insatiable desire to control any instrument of power. Kira was a singularity of conflict, a lone operative against a galaxy that now viewed her with universal hostility. Her unique training, the very thing that made her so formidable, also made her an anomaly, trusted by no faction. She possessed an artifact of immense power, a prize coveted by the galaxy's most dangerous forces. Her gambit had succeeded in securing the resonator, but it had cast her into a perilous void, a fugitive hunted from all sides, with only her wits and her fractured connection to the Force as allies. Cornered, with her ship damaged from a near miss with a bounty hunter's ion cannon, likely hired by remnants of Tate's cell, Kira sought refuge on the desolate, storm-racked world of Malastare. Its craggy mountains and ancient forgotten ruins offered a temporary reprieve. She found herself drawn to a crumbling edifice, half buried in the ochre dust, an old Jedi temple, its architecture distinct from the Atreus enclave, yet resonating with a familiar echo of the Force. Inside, amidst shattered pillars and faded murals depicting serene robed figures, the Force swirled with an unusual intensity. As Kira sat in what might have once been a meditation chamber, the Void Resonator resting beside her, the temple seemed to awaken. The air grew thick and visions, unbidden and overwhelmingly vivid, engulfed her. She saw Atreus Station, not as the ruin of her childhood memory, but vibrant, filled with the laughter of children and the calm wisdom of its masters. She saw her parents, Leora Vel and Kaelin Atreus, their faces now achingly clear, radiating love and a fierce protectiveness. And then, the vision shifted. She saw the attack, not through the terrified eyes of a 7-year-old, but with a horrifying, omniscient clarity. She saw the 501st Legion, Vader's fist, storming the station. She saw Anakin Skywalker, his blue lightsaber cutting down Jedi with a terrifying fury, his face contorted by rage and sorrow. She saw him, Vader, before the armor, before the respirator, leading the slaughter. The vision showed her masters fighting desperately, not to win but to buy time, to enact the Special Protection Protocol. She saw them channeling their combined Force energies to create a unique cloaking field around a hidden chamber, the one where she had been found. She saw her parents falling, not to anonymous troopers, but to Skywalker's blade, their final act a desperate plea to their former compatriot, a plea that went unheeded. The final, crushing understanding settled upon her, cold and absolute. Vader hadn't just been present at Atreus, he had been its destroyer. His act of taking her wasn't a moment of aberrant mercy or strategic foresight. It was a deeply personal, profoundly twisted act. She was not just a secret apprentice, she was a living monument to his greatest crime, a stolen relic from the pyre of his past. He hadn't saved her from abandonment. He had orphaned her, and then claimed her as his prize, perhaps a desperate subconscious attempt to mould a new Jedi, one loyal to him, to replace the order he had annihilated, to create a twisted reflection of the Padawan he himself had once been, or the children he might have had. The weight of this truth was heavier than any physical burden, a betrayal so profound it threatened to extinguish the very core of her being. The Force visions on Malastare had left Kira psychically battered, but imbued with a cold, hard clarity. Her grief was a raw wound, but her resolve had crystallized. As she emerged from the ruined temple, the sky above was no longer empty. 3 distinct fleets, small but potent, were descending through Malastar's turbulent atmosphere. First, the sleek, predatory lines of Imperial shuttles, bearing the unmistakable insignia of the Emperor's elite Inquisitorius, Palpatine's personal Jedi hunters. They had tracked the Resonator's potent force signature. Simultaneously, from another vector came a battered squadron of rebel starfighters, led by Captain Zara Tate's heavily scarred corvette, the Horizon's Edge. They were slower, less technologically advanced, but driven by a burning desire for justice, or perhaps for answers. And then, a lone Lambda-class shuttle, stark black against the ochre clouds, cut through the converging forces with an air of indisputable authority. Vader had arrived. The desolate plains around the Jedi Temple became a chaotic battlefield. Imperial Inquisitors, their red sabers hissing, engaged the outgunned but ferociously determined rebels. Blaster fire crisscrossed the ancient ruins. Kira, caught in the maelstrom, became a whirlwind of destructive grace. She moved with a fluidity that was neither wholly Jedi nor Sith, her lightsaber, its crystal now resonating with her own complex fractured identity, a turbulent blend of violet and crimson, a blur. She deflected blaster bolts with contemptuous ease, disabled Imperial walkers with precisely targeted force pushes, and disarmed Inquisitors with techniques that combined elegant parries with brutal, unexpected counterattacks. She fought not for a side, but for her own survival, her every move a testament to Vader's paradoxical training. Then, through the smoke and chaos he strode, Darth Vader, a figure of implacable doom. He ignored the skirmishes, his focus solely on Kira and the Resonator she now held defensively. He cut down an overzealous Inquisitor who dared to block his path with a casual sweep of his crimson blade. They stood face to face amidst the ruins of a fallen order, master and apprentice, betrayer and betrayed. The air crackled with their combined force energies. "The Resonator, Kira," Vader's vocoder rasped, the use of her true name a stark acknowledgement of the unveiled past. "And you, both will come with me." "Why?" Kira's voice was raw, amplified by the Force cutting through the din of battle. "Why did you take me? After what you did to my parents, to Atreus?" She demanded the complete truth. No more lies, no more manipulations. The battle raged around them, a mere backdrop to this far more significant confrontation. Vader stood immobile for a long moment, the sounds of the battle fading into a dull roar as the universe seemed to contract around them. The wind whipped Kira's dark hair across her face, but her gaze never left the impassive black mask of her master, her tormentor. "They were Jedi," Vader finally stated, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very stones of the ruined temple. "They, like all Jedi, were a threat to the stability I sought to bring the galaxy. They were an obstacle." The words were cold, pragmatic, the justification of a tyrant. "And me?" Kira pressed, her voice trembling with suppressed rage and grief. "Was I just salvage? A tool to be reforged?" "Initially," Vader admitted, a surprising, almost imperceptible shift in his posture suggesting the weight of his confession. "You were an experiment, a potential, but you became more. Your power, your unique affinity for both sides of the Force. I saw in you the potential to achieve what I alone could not." He paused, and the next words hung heavy in the air. "The Emperor is a disease. He has corrupted the galaxy, twisted the very fabric of the Force to his will. My original intention, Kira, was to train you, to hone your unparalleled abilities so that together we could overthrow him. You were to be my ultimate weapon, my partner in forging a new order, a true order." As if summoned by his treasonous words, a new chilling presence descended upon Malastare. The fighting momentarily faltered as a Theta-class shuttle, flanked by elite sovereign protectors in their crimson robes, landed with ominous grace some distance away. Emperor Palpatine, a small withered figure radiating immense dark side power, emerged, his yellow eyes fixed on Vader and Kira. Simultaneously, Vader revealed another truth, his voice urgent. The Void Resonator, its function is not solely negation, as the rebels believe. That is merely its default cruder application. Its ancient creators designed it with a dual purpose. It can also amplify force connections, create a resonance that can bind, strengthen, even heal the rifts within the force or within an individual. It is a key, Kira, to unlocking potentials far beyond what either Jedi or Sith have ever dreamed. The choice was laid bare, stark and immediate. Help Vader, her parents' murderer, in his bid to usurp his own master, a tyrant for a tyrant, but perhaps with a sliver of a chance for a different galaxy, under their combined unique power. Join the rebels, who now looked at her with suspicion and betrayal, but whose ideals still resonated with a faint, pure note within her, or forge her own path, a terrifying, unknown wilderness. Palpatine glided towards them, a malevolent smile playing on his lips. Lord Vader, so loyal, and this is the anomaly you sought to hide? How disappointing, and yet how intriguing. His gaze fell upon the resonator in Kira's hand. A fascinating toy, and a powerful apprentice. Both will serve me well. The Emperor's arrival forced the decision. There was no more time. The air on Malastare thickened, charged with an almost unbearable concentration of the Force. Palpatine raised a withered hand, and arcs of visceral purple lightning erupted, not aimed at Vader, but at Kira. She is mine now, my Lord Vader. You have outlived your usefulness in her development. Vader reacted instantly, his crimson blade igniting to intercept the deadly torrent, the clash of energies sending shockwaves across the ruined plaza. She is not yours to command, Master, he roared, the vocoder cracking under the strain, revealing a raw human anger beneath. It was a maelstrom of power. Palpatine, a vortex of pure dark side malevolence, unleashed the full fury of his Sith sorcery. Vader, a bulwark of disciplined rage and immense strength, met him head-on, their duel a cataclysmic display that tore chunks from the ancient temple stones. The remaining Inquisitors and rebels paused their own fighting, awestruck and terrified by the battle of titans. Kira stood at the epicenter, the void resonator humming in her grip. She could feel the conflicting currents of the Force tearing at her. Palpatine's suffocating darkness, Vader's tormented power, the distant, fading light of the Jedi Temple itself, and the faint, hopeful signatures of the rebels. Her training, the synthesis of Jedi empathy and Sith focus, allowed her to perceive it all, to understand the intricate, terrible dance. Then, an idea, born not of strategy or doctrine but of pure, desperate instinct, bloomed in her mind. The resonator. Not as a weapon to sever, nor as a simple amplifier for one individual, but as something more. Closing her eyes, she reached out, not with anger or fear, but with a profound, aching connection to everything around her. She poured her own unique Force signature into the resonator, the light she had nurtured in secret, the darkness she'd been forced to embrace, the balance she had unknowingly achieved. Instead of choosing a side, she chose all sides, the totality of the Force itself. The resonator pulsed, not with destructive energy, but with an incandescent, multi-hued light. It didn't sever Palpatine's connection, nor did it overtly amplify Vader's. Instead, it resonated with the ambient Force, with the life energy of Malastare, with the conflicted hearts of every being present. It created a field, a vast harmonic wave that didn't attack, but enveloped. The effect was staggering. Palpatine's lightning sputtered and died, his connection to the unbridled hatred that fueled it momentarily dampened. replaced by an echo of the pain and suffering he had inflicted across the galaxy. Vader faltered, his assault losing its edge as the resonator's wave washed over him, bringing not weakness, but a flicker of the agonizing conflict that defined his existence, the good man buried deep beneath the armor. The fighting across the plaza ceased, troopers and rebels alike lowering their weapons, disoriented by the sudden, overwhelming wave of shared experience, a fleeting glimpse of the interconnectedness of all things. Kira didn't attack, she revealed. She turned the weapon into a shield, a mirror reflecting the true nature of the Force, forcing a momentary stunned peace. In that fragile moment of equilibrium, a stray piece of debris, dislodged by the earlier duel, crashed down. Vader, distracted by the resonator's wave, moved too slowly. The heavy stone struck his shoulder and chest plate with immense force. His armor, already stressed, buckled and cracked, diagnostic system screaming. He stumbled, falling to one knee, and a section of his helmet fractured, revealing a glimpse of pale, scarred flesh and a single, haunted eye. The man beneath the monster, vulnerable and exposed. Palpatine, recovering his senses, snarled in frustration, the unexpected power of the resonator in Kira's hands clearly unsettling him. The unnatural quiet on Malastare was heavy, broken only by the whistle of the wind through the ruins and the crackle of Vader's damaged systems. Palpatine, his face a mask of controlled fury, regarded Kira with a new, dangerous level of interest. The raw power he had sensed was one thing. This ability to manipulate the Force in such an unorthodox, almost transcendent way, using an artifact he himself had coveted, was another entirely. "You are more than I envisioned," Palpatine conceded, his voice a venomous whisper. He glanced at the kneeling, visibly damaged Vader, then back to Kira, who still held the softly glowing resonator. "This changes little. The galaxy will still bend to my will. But know this, child, you have made a powerful enemy and a most intriguing specimen." With a final lingering glare, the Emperor turned, his sovereign protectors closing rank. He would not risk a direct confrontation now, not when the girl's abilities were so unpredictable and Vader was clearly compromised. He would retreat, reassess, and plot. His departure was as ominous as his arrival. The rebels, led by a stunned Captain Tate and a recovering Davin, who watched Kira with a complex mix of awe, fear, and something unreadable, slowly approached. They had witnessed her power, the way she'd halted the galaxy's two most terrifying figures. They retrieved the void resonator, which Kira relinquished without a word, its light dimming as it left her touch. There were no accusations now, only a profound uncertainty. What are you?" Tate finally asked, the fight gone from her voice. Kira had no easy answer. Someone who is tired of choices made by others. Davin stepped forward. "You saved us, all of us, despite everything." He gestured to the resonator. "Its secrets are clearly deeper than we knew. We will guard it." He paused. "You're free to go, Kira. We won't stop you." It was an act of faith, perhaps of gratitude, or simply a recognition that they could not hold her if they tried. As Kira turned to leave, Vader struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his damaged chest plate. The exposed section of his face was stark, revealing the pain and weariness of the man within the machine. Kira, his voice through the damaged vocoder, was more human, more gravelly than she had ever heard it. "Your power, it is beyond anything I imagined, beyond Jedi, beyond Sith. You are truly free. Choose your own path." It was not a command nor a plea, but a statement of fact, a final grudging acknowledgement of her autonomy, perhaps the closest he could come to an apology or to letting go. He then turned and with a slow, deliberate effort, limped towards his own shuttle, a diminished but still formidable figure disappearing into the dust and shadows. Kira watched them all depart, Emperor, rebels, Vader, until she stood alone amidst the silent, windswept ruins of Malastare, free. The word echoed in the vast emptiness around her and within her. But free to do what? Free to be who? She rejected the Empire, its sterile tyranny, its foundation of fear. She rejected the rebellion, for all its noble intentions, because their path was one of perpetual conflict, defined by opposition, and she was tired of fighting their wars or anyone else's. Vader's offer to rule, even his final grudging acceptance of her freedom, was tainted by the blood of her parents, by years of manipulation. Yet she could not deny the value of what he had taught her. The discipline, the control, the understanding of the Force in its totality, its light and its shadow. These were tools she would keep. To them she would add her own philosophy, one born of her unique experiences. A philosophy of balance, not as a passive midpoint, but as an active, dynamic understanding of all aspects of the Force and of life itself. Her first act as a truly free individual was to return to the only place she could tentatively call a beginning, Atreus Station. The journey was a pilgrimage. The station was still a wreck, a cold, silent mausoleum drifting in the void. But now, armed with the truth, she walked its ghostly corridors not as a frightened child, but as a survivor, a daughter paying her respects. She found the hidden chamber where she'd been sheltered, the place where her masters had made their last stand. There she meditated, not to draw power, but to listen, to honour their sacrifice, to grieve for the parents she had never truly known. And in the silence of that ruined sanctuary, an idea began to form. She was not the only one. The galaxy was vast. There had to be others like her. Force sensitives who didn't fit the rigid moulds of Jedi or Sith, individuals lost, hidden, or hunted. Perhaps she could find them. Perhaps they could forge a new way, a third path, operating in the spaces between the great powers, a network dedicated not to galactic conquest or rebellion, but to understanding, to protection, to preserving the balance she now believed was essential. Atreus Station, once a symbol of her loss, became the birthplace of a new purpose. 6 months passed. Kira moved through the galaxy like a whisper, her Force signature carefully veiled, her presence a rumour in the hidden corners of the Outer Rim and the forgotten nebulae of wild space. She sought out others touched by the Force, individuals who had fallen through the cracks, a former Jedi Padawan who had fled the Purge and now lived as a humble farmer, a lone mystic on a forgotten moon who communed with the Force through ancient rituals, even a disillusioned Imperial operative who had discovered a latent sensitivity and feared retribution. She didn't offer them doctrine or demand allegiance. She offered understanding, a safe space to explore their abilities without judgment, and the beginnings of her own evolving philosophy. Her nascent network was small, clandestine, its members scattered, communicating through encrypted channels and shared meditative trances. They operated in the shadows, sometimes offering aid to those caught in the crossfire of the galactic conflict, helping refugees escape a planetary blockade, subtly diverting an Imperial patrol from a fledgling rebel outpost, or even anonymously warning an Imperial governor of a genuine internal threat that had nothing to do with the rebellion, all in the service of a greater, more nuanced equilibrium. Vader, surprisingly, did not hunt her. Occasionally a coded message would reach her through untraceable channels, a piece of obscure information, a cryptic warning, a philosophical query. Their complex, deeply scarred relationship continued, not as master and apprentice, but as two independent, powerful beings bound by a shared, traumatic past, now circling each other at a wary distance. He seemed to be observing her new path with a mixture of frustration and a strange, detached curiosity. But new shadows were stirring. Palpatine had not forgotten the girl who had defied him. Reports began to filter through Kira's network of increased Imperial Inquisitor activity, not just hunting Jedi remnants, but searching for unregistered Force sensitives, for anomalous talents. The Emperor was casting a wider net, and Kira knew her burgeoning organisation, her Solaris, as she was beginning to call them, would inevitably become a primary target. The game was far from over. It had merely entered a new, more subtle phase. One of Vader's cryptic messages led Kira to a bleak Imperial research facility on the volcanic world of Sullust. Inside, children were being subjected to horrific experiments, their Force sensitivities being brutally awakened and twisted for dark purposes by Imperial scientists under the direction of the Inquisitorius. The scene was a nightmarish echo of what her own fate might have been under the Emperor. Kira, moving with the deadly efficiency honed over years, infiltrated the facility. She was not alone. 2 members of her fledgling network, the former Padawan and the Mystic, provided distractions and disabled security systems, their own unique Force abilities complementing hers. Kira reached the central laboratory to find a young Zabrak child, no older than she had been when Vader found her on Atrius, strapped to a cruel apparatus, crying out as his nascent powers were forcibly amplified. The ensuing confrontation with the presiding Inquisitor was swift and decisive. Kira's hybrid style, her ability to wield both tranquil calm and focused fury, proved overwhelming. She freed the child, whose name was Zare, and brought him into her fold. She began to teach him, not as Vader had taught her, through fear and domination, but through patience and understanding. She shared the combat techniques, the meditation practices, the aggressive Force channeling, but she wove into it her own burgeoning philosophy. The importance of balance, not as a compromise, but as an embrace of all aspects of oneself and the Force. She taught him about choice, the power to define one's own path, irrespective of origin or external pressures. She emphasized that the Force, in its raw state, was neutral. It was the intent, the heart of the user, that shaped it towards creation or destruction. "Power is a tool, Tsar," she would tell him, as they meditated amidst the quiet solitude of their hidden sanctuary, a remote moonlet shielded by ancient nebulae. Like a hydrospanner, it can build, or it can break. The choice is always yours. She saw in him, and in the others she gathered, the potential for a new generation of Force users, unburdened by the dogma of the old orders, capable of navigating the complexities of a galaxy teetering between light and darkness. 2 years later, the network whispered about in the darkest corners of the galaxy as the Hidden Weave, or the Children of the Twin Moons, a nod to Kira's frequent use of Mustapha's moon as a coded reference point, had grown. It comprised a few dozen individuals, each unique, each powerful in their own right, operating under Kira's guidance but with considerable autonomy. They were a quiet countercurrent to the raging storms of the Galactic Civil War, their influence subtle but growing, like mycelia spreading beneath the forest floor. They rescued, they protected, they learned, always striving to maintain a delicate balance, to heal the wounds inflicted by the larger factions. Kira stood on the observation deck of their latest mobile sanctuary, a repurposed old Republic cruiser salvaged from a forgotten battlefield, its systems meticulously upgraded and cloaked. She looked out at the star-dusted canvas of hyperspace, reflecting on her journey. She was no longer the lost child of Atrius, nor the conflicted assassin of Vader, nor the hunted fugitive. She had forged an identity from the shattered pieces of her past, an identity that was wholly her own. A coded, encrypted signal pinged on her private communication. It was a channel she hadn't expected to hear from again, one that sent a familiar chill down her spine, yet also a flicker of something else. anticipation, resignation. It was from Vader. The message was terse, devoid of any personal address, yet its implications were immense. An unprecedented anomaly, outer rim, requires your unique perspective, coordinates to follow. Kira closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the thrum of the Force within her. The quiet chorus of her network spread across the stars. Vader needed her, not as an apprentice, not as a weapon, but as something else. As an equal, perhaps. Or perhaps he simply recognized that some threats, some mysteries, lay beyond the rigid confines of Sith or Imperial power. She opened her eyes, a small, determined smile playing on her lips. The galaxy was still a dangerous, chaotic place, but she was no longer merely reacting to it. She was a part of its intricate weave, a shaper of its destiny on her own terms. "I am Kira Vel'Atrius," she whispered to the uncaring stars, the name a reclamation, a statement of her whole, complex self. "I am Solari, child of two worlds, servant to none, protector of all that struggles for balance." She turned from the viewport, ready to face whatever new challenge awaited, ready to step back into the larger conflict, not as a pawn, but as a player in her own right. The legacy of the Solari was just beginning. The Anglo-Saxon Legacy. Tyler Wheeler paced outside the elegant marble hall, heart pounding, wondering if he should have just turned around and fled. As an investigative journalist, chasing leads was routine, but this time everything in his gut told him the stakes were dangerously high. He clutched his press badge, flipping it nervously between his fingers while trying to blend in with the crowd streaming into the building. The invitation he'd received was so cryptic he almost thought it was a prank, but curiosity had won out. He had to see what was hidden behind the veneer of this corporate assembly. The hall's grand facade bore the insignia of Carlyle Holdings. Normally, Victor Carlyle, the reclusive billionaire CEO, had no reason to invite lowly journalists to his gatherings. But Tyler's editor at the London Chronicle had insisted he pursue every avenue. Carlyle's hush-hush event was rumoured to involve a cast of powerful players, politicians, bankers, intelligence chiefs. Once Tyler stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted from corporate politeness to something akin to hushed paranoia. Men in dark suits with stern expressions roamed about, their discreet earpieces revealing they weren't ordinary security. Tyler slipped through the corridors, careful to keep his head down. Crystal chandeliers cast shards of light across polished floors, making everything seem too pristine. He found his way into a smaller side room, hoping to catch a whiff of something worth reporting. Through a slightly ajar door, he spotted a cluster of people gathered around a large oak table. Tyler recognized General Alexander Pike. The man practically defined the phrase imposing figure, with broad shoulders and a precise, clipped manner that spoke of years of high-level military service. Next to him was Victor Carlyle himself, exuding the refined arrogance of old money. The conversation that trickled out made Tyler's blood run cold. They were discussing a centuries-old plan, something called the Anglo-Saxon Mission, which aimed to trigger wars in strategically chosen regions, China, Iran and beyond. Out of their mouths flowed phrases like global reset, dominance, and the final spine-chilling mention, extraterrestrial sanction. Tyler suppressed a gasp. Extraterrestrial? He inched closer to the door as they continued. "It must appear natural," Carlyle said calmly, his measured tone belying the horrifying content. "Geopolitical tensions will escalate on schedule, setting off the chain reaction. Then the Overseer's final instructions can commence." General Pike leaned in. "Are we absolutely certain we can trust them?" Our alliance has existed in secret for centuries, yet each generation requires more. Convincing. Trust them. Tyler's mind whirled. Was the General implying an alliance with something other than governments? Something not of this earth? Carlyle gave a curt nod. The quantum device is nearly complete at the Sentinel facility. Once we have the final coordinates, the reckoning begins. Even if our pawns grow uneasy, we push forward. The meeting ended. Tyler hurried down the corridor, sweat dampening his shirt collar. He'd stumbled onto something bigger than corporate malfeasance or political corruption. This was potentially the biggest story of his career, assuming he lived long enough to publish it. Moments later, the heavy sound of footsteps behind him shattered his racing thoughts. A hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Lost, are we?" came a cold voice. Tyler turned to see a man in a black suit, earpiece glinting ominously. Before Tyler could respond, the man sized him up, recognized him as an intruder, and grabbed him roughly by the collar. Adrenaline kicked in. Tyler wrested himself free in a chaotic burst of motion. He sprinted through the winding passages, ignoring the shouts behind him. Alarm bells blared. Attendees peered out from behind gilded doors as Tyler swerved past them, searching for an exit. Dodging another security guard, he finally burst through a side door into the chilly London night, lungs seizing with fear and relief. He knew he couldn't go home, no telling how fast Carlyle's men would trace him. Instead, he ran until the city lights blurred. By the time he reached a rundown bar near the Thames, his breath came in ragged gasps, and he was drenched in cold sweat. Inside, neon lights flickered, as a half-asleep bartender barely glanced his way. Tyler retreated to a corner table, pulling out his phone. He needed someone who knew how to vanish off the grid. He needed Nathan Drake. Nathan was an ex-intelligence agent turned mercenary who had parted ways with official institutions under dubious circumstances. Whispers said he'd once been the best infiltration expert in British intelligence, until a fiasco in Eastern Europe left him branded a liability. Now, rumour had it he operated on his own code. He owed Tyler a favour from a previous exposé that had cleared Nathan's name of a wrongdoing. If anyone could help Tyler navigate a threat like this, it would be him. Minutes later, the phone rang. "Wheeler," came Nathan's deep, measured voice. "I was hoping never to hear from you again." "Believe me," Tyler replied. "This wasn't part of my plan. Listen, Nathan, I'm in trouble. Big trouble," the line crackled. "Define big," Tyler swallowed, recalling the disturbing fragments he'd overheard. "I can't say over the phone, just know there's an organisation orchestrating wars, and that they might not be entirely human. They know who I am. They'll kill me if I don't vanish." A long pause. "Meet me at the old safe house in Camden above that boarded-up antique shop. I'll be there in an hour. Don't bring anyone." Tyler ended the call and stared at the swirling ice cubes in the glass the bartender had dropped off unasked. A nauseating swirl of fear and excitement churned in his stomach. The world had just turned upside down, and he was falling headlong into a conspiracy that spanned centuries. He'd expected revelations about backroom deals, war profiteering, or data leaks. But the talk of an alien alliance, that was so far outside his realm of understanding he felt like he was stepping into a lucid dream, or maybe a nightmare. He arrived at the safe house in Camden, slipping in through the alley entrance. The building was a dilapidated relic of Victorian London. Barred windows, rotted shutters, and the stale smell of dust. Upstairs, Nathan Drake waited in an empty apartment lit by a single flickering bulb. He was lean, with vigilant eyes that scanned Tyler from head to toe, always looking for threats in corners no one else noticed. "You look awful," Nathan said, pulling Tyler inside and locking 3 separate bolts behind him. "Tell me everything." Tyler recounted his ordeal, the strange meeting at Carlisle Holdings, the talk of the Anglo-Saxon mission, references to a quantum device, and especially the coded mentions of the Overseer and extraterrestrial sanction. Nathan listened in stony silence, only nodding occasionally. Once Tyler finished, Nathan placed a small device on the rickety table. It emitted a soft hum. "Signal jammer," Nathan explained. "No one's listening, but keep your voice down. They'll track any electronic footprint." Tyler tried to steady his voice. "Nathan, I know it sounds insane, but I heard it. There's some alien faction behind this. They want to orchestrate war, then a cataclysmic event and set up some kind of global order." Nathan pursed his lips. "If you'd told me this last year, I'd have laughed in your face. But I've heard whispers, rumours of advanced technology, hidden agendas far older than any modern government. That's why I left intelligence. There were things I couldn't reconcile." In that meeting, Tyler continued, Carlyle and General Pike talked about launching a conflict with China and Iran. They also mentioned something called the Sentinel in the Scottish Highlands, and a final phase they're calling the Reckoning. It's beyond just war. It sounded like they want to reshape the Earth itself. Nathan exhaled slowly. "We don't have much time. Once they realise you got away, they'll come for you with everything they've got." He stood scanning the narrow windows. "First step, we vanish. Then we gather intel. If this runs as deep as you say, we need more than just you and me on this." Tyler tightened his jaw. "You said you know people, right? Off-the-grid types?" "Yeah," Nathan nodded. "One of them is an ex-military strategist, Raphael Rafe DeLuca. Another is a hacker named Ashley Winters. We might also need the help of Dr. Helena Moore, a scientist who got caught up in government research projects she wants nothing more to do with. But if what you're describing is real, she might know exactly what's going on with this alien technology." Tyler felt a flutter of hope. He wasn't alone. "Let's do it. Let's blow this thing wide open." Nathan offered a wry smile. "Easy. People who pick fights with men like Carlyle and Pike don't live long. We have to be careful, methodical." Outside, the wind howled. Inside that dim apartment, an unspoken accord formed between two men who realised they were standing at the edge of something impossibly big. The Anglo-Saxon mission was no ordinary conspiracy. It was a centuries-old juggernaut, apparently powered by otherworldly forces, and it was months, maybe weeks, away from unleashing a carefully orchestrated wave of destruction across the globe. Nathan powered down the signal jammer, scanning the hallway for signs of infiltration. "I've got a small safe house up north. We'll head there tonight. Then we'll reach out to Rafe and the others. If we're going to blow this conspiracy open, we'll need every ally we can find." Tyler nodded, adrenaline pulsing in his veins. A quiet promise echoed in his mind. He would expose the truth, even if it meant risking everything. Under the dim glow of a single lamp, Tyler Wheeler hunched over a battered wooden desk, sifting through a web of rumours and half-buried historical records. The safe house was hardly luxurious, an abandoned farmhouse nestled among moorlands in North Yorkshire, but it offered one precious commodity: seclusion. Rafe DeLuca had joined them that morning, slipping in with barely a whisper of his arrival, moving like a phantom among the scattered shadows. Nathan Drake was out on the porch, eyes peeled for any signs of unwanted visitors. He trusted no one, not even the sheep that wandered nearby. Rafe, a former military strategist, wore an air of solemn focus. His dark hair was cropped short, and a small scar beneath his left eye hinted at a violent past. Yet his calm demeanour and sharp eyes suggested someone who thrived on dissecting complicated puzzles. "We'll need to start at the beginning," Rafe said, sliding a small notebook over to Tyler. "From what I've pieced together, the Anglo-Saxon mission has roots older than the British Empire. We're talking knights and barons forging alliances that transcended monarchy. There's evidence that suggests an extraterrestrial presence guided some early expansions, quietly offering certain technologies." Tyler flipped through the pages, astonished to see references dating back to the medieval period, cryptic accounts of unexplained weaponry, sudden leaps in navigation, rumours of star visitors in the court of English kings. So they've been shaping our world for centuries. Rafe nodded, feeding small technological boosts at strategic points in history. The conspirators used these to maintain an advantage, dominance through commerce, colonization, and eventually modern warfare. Each time they masked it as human ingenuity or the spoils of empire. Nathan stepped in, scanning the notebooks. That explains the leaps in industrialization, or how certain powers always seemed one step ahead. But how does this all tie to the quantum device you heard about at Carlisle's meeting? Tyler took a breath. From what I gathered, there's a final plan, a culminating event they want to spark. An engineered global crisis that paves the way for total Western control. Carlisle and General Pike mentioned a geophysical trigger. It's not just bombs or biochemical warfare. It's something that can disrupt the Earth's natural balance. Rafe's gaze hardened. And the Overseer? That name keeps popping up in the intel. Some kind of alien representative? Likely, Tyler said. They talked about the Overseer as if it were the final authority. They see it as a guide or a partner in this mission. But there was hesitation. General Pike questioned if they could really trust an alien alliance. Nathan exhaled. They still believe that even if Earth is partially devastated, they'll come out on top. They must assume the survivors will be easy to corral under a new order. But there's obviously more to it. The silence that followed was thick with dread. They all sensed it, a cosmic game where humanity was a pawn. Tyler felt a pang of anxiety. He thought about the centuries of hidden meddling, the possibility that entire wars and leaps in progress had been orchestrated from the shadows. Beneath it all, an otherworldly puppet master. Ashley Winters arrived after dusk, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and toting a duffel bag of tech equipment. She was slender, with tired eyes that spoke of too many nights spent behind glowing screens. Without a word, she started setting up a laptop, cables snaking across the rickety floor. "I've got something," she announced an hour later. "I hacked into some back channels connected to Carlisle's financial networks. The man's wealth is insane. He's funneling billions into a place called the Sentinel Initiative. The data points to a covert facility in the Scottish Highlands, near an old research station left over from the Cold War." Rafe pulled out a map, unfolding it across the table. "That would be here," he said, pointing to a remote region of rugged terrain. "Perfect place for secret experiments. Hard to reach, no prying eyes. Weather alone can kill intruders if they're not prepared." "What about Dr. Helena Moore?" Tyler asked. "We need her expertise. She was involved in government research on alien tech, right?" Nathan nodded. "She's the key to deciphering the science behind it. I've tried to contact her, but no response. Last I heard, she had gone into hiding after resigning from a special military R&D program. Rumour has it she developed an untraceable chemical agent derived from alien biomaterial. After that, she ghosted. She might be lying low somewhere near Cambridge." Tyler rubbed his temples, exhaustion creeping in. "We need to find her. She may be the only one who can confirm whether this quantum device is real, or how to stop it." Ashley interrupted, eyes glued to her screen. "Speaking of which, I got a partial blueprint of something codenamed Project Kronos. Seems to be an advanced energy manipulation system. Could be tied to geophysical disruptions, like triggering earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. There is mention of dimensional resonance and non-terrestrial scaffolding. This is out of our league, guys." Nathan let out a tense laugh, devoid of humour. "That's the story of my life, always out of my league." Just then the air changed. Rafe tensed, hand shifting toward the sidearm at his belt. In the distance, headlights cut through the darkness outside. 2 black SUVs. The group exchanged alarmed looks. They'd been found. "Basement exit," Nathan hissed, motioning for Tyler and Ashley to gather their gear. Rafe peered out a sliver of the boarded window. Armed men were moving in formation, scanning the farmhouse perimeter. "They're professionals," Rafe whispered. "Night vision, suppressed weapons. We'll have to be quick." Tyler's pulse hammered. "We can't outrun them if they have vehicles." Nathan's expression hardened. "We won't. I'll lead them away. Rafe, you get Tyler and Ashley to the fallback site. I've got a decoy car hidden out back. I'll draw them east, you go west. Rendezvous in 3 days. We find Helena Moore next." Rafe gripped Nathan's shoulder. "Don't get yourself killed." Nathan gave a thin smile. "Not part of the plan." With that, they sprang into motion. Ashley hurriedly copied data from her laptop onto a portable drive. Tyler stuffed Rafe's notebooks into a waterproof bag. They raced for the back door just as the front door splintered under a heavy blow. Shouts erupted in the farmhouse corridor. Nathan fired a short burst from a suppressed submachine gun, pinning the intruders momentarily. Tyler, Ashley and Rafe slipped into the darkness outside. The frigid wind whipped across the moor, slicing through their thin jackets. But the three forced themselves to remain steady. One misstep could mean being caught in a sniper's scope. Nathan peeled out in the decoy vehicle, headlights blazing, drawing immediate pursuit. 3 assailants sprinted after him, muzzle flashes piercing the night. Rafe steered Tyler and Ashley toward a hidden Land Rover, parked behind a collapsed barn. They crammed inside. The engine sputtered, but finally roared to life, and they jolted onto a narrow dirt track behind the farmhouse. "Keep low," Rafe warned, checking the rearview mirror. Mercenaries were scanning the area with high-powered flashlights, but with Nathan's distraction, the Land Rover slipped away into the night. Hours later, they'd put miles between themselves and the ambush site. All 3 were shaken. Ashley clutched her laptop as if it were a life raft, eyes glued to a small real-time GPS feed. Nathan's decoy car was still moving, but the signal flickered ominously, indicating a chase. Rafe grimaced, focusing on the road. Tyler's mind churned with fear and guilt. He'd dragged these people into a secret war. Lives were now at stake because of a secret meeting he wasn't even meant to attend. They eventually found a half-ruined cottage near an abandoned mining town, where they risked a few hours of rest. Tyler managed to doze off, haunted by flashes of armed men and the eerie references to alien alliances. He dreamed of the Overseer, a shadowy figure standing in a swirling haze, silently orchestrating events that shaped empires, with eyes that seemed older than time itself. By morning, Rafe coaxed the Land Rover back to life. "We head south toward Cambridge," he said. "Dr. Moore might have answers for us. We'll lay low along the way." Ashley tapped furiously on her laptop, scanning backdoor channels for any sign of their enemies' communications. They're calling themselves Shadow Recon units in some coded chatter, possibly under General Pike's command or Carlisle's private security. Either way, they're well-funded and well-trained. Tyler stared out the window at the rolling hills, mind struggling with the cosmic scale of the conspiracy. The Anglo-Saxon mission was older and more complex than anything he'd imagined. If an alien presence had been steering humanity for centuries, the question he couldn't shake was, why? What did these extraterrestrials gain from pushing Earth toward the brink of destruction? The countryside blurred as they sped along, uncertain of their next steps but resolute in their mission. Tyler gripped his notebook, a swirl of fear and resolve coursing through his veins. They had to find Dr. Helena Moore, had to unravel the Overseer's endgame. Time was short, and the mission's final phase, the reckoning, loomed on the horizon like a storm preparing to swallow civilization whole. Cambridge in the early hours was awash in morning mist. The city's spires cut ghostly silhouettes against a silver sky. Tyler Wheeler felt a surge of anxiety as Rafe navigated the narrow streets, each turn bringing them closer to Dr. Helena Moore's rumoured hideout. Ashley Winters huddled in the back seat, her gaze flicking nervously between her laptop screen and the windows. Every time they passed a dark sedan or a random pedestrian, Tyler worried it might be another set of eyes tracking them. After hours of cautious looping around unsuspecting neighbourhoods, Rafe finally parked near a modest row house at the edge of town. The building's windows were shuttered, and the front garden was overgrown as if nobody had tended to it in years. They approached warily. Tyler knocked 3 times on the scuffed door. Minutes stretched. Then the door opened a crack and a pale, slender woman peered out. She had sharp cheekbones, piercing eyes, and her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She looked at the 3 of them as though they were ghosts. "Dr. Moore?" Tyler asked softly. "We need your help. My name is Tyler Wheeler. This is Rafe DeLuca, and..." She cut him off. "I know who you are. My cameras saw you coming. I heard about you in certain circles. You're the journalist who stumbled onto the Anglo-Saxon mission." Her tone was guarded, but curiosity shimmered beneath. "Come in, quickly." Once inside, Helena Moore led them to a cramped sitting room. Stacks of papers, old research notes, and obscure scientific texts cluttered every surface. A half-disassembled device, some sort of scanning apparatus, lay on the dining table. She locked the door behind them and turned a series of deadbolts. "I left the program 2 years ago," she began, crossing her arms. "It took me a while to realise the scope of what I was dealing with. By the time I learned about the extraterrestrial involvement, I'd already contributed to their research. That's my shame to bear." Ashley stepped forward. "We think they're close to finishing a quantum device at a facility called the Sentinel. Something capable of triggering geophysical events. We need to understand how to disable it." Helena exhaled, her hand moving to the disassembled scanner on the table. "I only saw fragments of the data. The architecture is based on dimensional resonance, unlocking certain frequencies that can tap directly into Earth's tectonic structures. If the pulses are strong enough, they could induce massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, potentially even shift weather patterns." Rafe eyed the apparatus. "And this is alien tech?" "Partially," Helena said. "The core designs were reverse engineered from them. The Overseers Alliance provided key components. Our top brass believed it would secure Western dominance if we could selectively unleash chaos. That's why I quit. I couldn't be party to mass murder." Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is bigger than war. It's potentially rewriting the planet." Helena nodded gravely. "And they have zero qualms about collateral damage. Billions could die." A grim hush fell over the room. Then Helena leaned closer. "What I don't understand is why these extraterrestrials want this. People in the program theorize the aliens might be terraforming Earth for their own ends. Another theory is that they're simply trying to cull humanity, leaving only a fraction under direct control." Ashley stepped to the window, parting the curtains a fraction to scan the street. "We still have to worry about staying alive. The same people you left behind are trying to kill us now. They already attacked our safe house." "That doesn't surprise me," Helena said. "Carlisle, Pike, all of them. They won't let anything jeopardize the mission. They've invested too much for too long." She gestured to the equipment. "I've been working on a frequency disruptor that might neutralize the quantum device's resonance cycle. Trouble is, I haven't tested it on any large-scale hardware. It's still theoretical." Tyler nodded. "And we need to get you inside the Sentinel to test it for real. Or at least close enough to sabotage the device." Rafe rubbed the stubble on his jaw. "We have limited manpower. Nathan Drake is out there, hopefully still alive, drawing away Carlisle's mercenaries. It's just the 4 of us. We're going to need a plan." Helena bit her lip, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "Then we'd better hurry. Every day they inch closer to activating the reckoning. Once it starts, reversing it might be impossible." The plan that formed was audacious, balancing cunning and sheer desperation. Ashley hacked into public transport data to mislead any watchers. They would head north, but by roundabout routes, changing cars, forging IDs. Helena's frequency disruptor would need final calibrations en route. If they were lucky, by the time they reached the Sentinel, they'd have a fighting chance. Fate had other plans. Before they could even leave Cambridge, Ashley's laptop pinged with a high-priority alert. She frowned at the screen. This is a direct intercept from one of Carlisle's private channels. He's authorizing a level 5 contingency, targeting multiple sites. The coordinates... Oh no. Tyler moved behind her, scanning the data. One of these coordinates is in London, near the newspaper's headquarters. Another is in Dover, and the others are scattered worldwide, ports, major cities. Helena's eyes flashed with alarm. They're tightening the noose, possibly fueling tension with China and Iran by orchestrating terror incidents or sabotage. They want all eyes fixated on global conflict so nobody notices the Sentinel. And they're also likely trying to draw you out, Tyler. Rafe gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white. If they're moving to a contingency plan, that means the final phase is near. They won't allow any loose ends. An uneasy hush filled the room. Tyler felt guilt gnaw at him. The newspaper staff he'd worked alongside could now be in danger. But he also knew the bigger picture. Countless innocent lives at stake if the reckoning triggered. We stop at the source, Tyler said quietly, voice edged with resolve. If the Sentinel is destroyed or the quantum device disabled, the entire plan collapses. Helena gathered her disruptor components. Let's do it. But we'll need a small miracle to get past the layers of security around that facility. Rafe turned to Ashley. We'll need forged credentials, some way to slip in under the radar. I can handle that, Ashley replied, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. But it won't hold up under thorough scrutiny. We'll also have to plan for infiltration, guard schedules, sensor arrays, the works. They began packing, tension thick in the cramped room. Helena insisted on bringing boxes of notes, her life's work on alien tech. For hours they organised, compiled and destroyed anything too incriminating to leave behind. By midday they had a plan, risky, but it was all they had. Just as they prepared to slip out the back, a distinct hum vibrated in the air. At first, Tyler thought it was a truck idling outside. Then the windows rattled, and the humming took on a subsonic pulse that set teeth on edge. Helena's face went ashen. That's an acoustic disruption array. Military grade. They've found me. Moments later, the front door exploded inward. Splinters showered the hallway. A squad of masked operatives stormed in, rifles raised. Smoke grenades clattered on the floor, spewing choking clouds. Rafe reacted instantly, yanking Tyler and Ashley behind an upturned couch. Helena ducked into a side room, rummaging for something. Gunfire erupted, muffled by the swirling smoke. Bullets whizzed overhead, lodging into plaster walls. Tyler coughed, eyes streaming. Ashley tried to activate the disruptor, but Helena shouted, "No! It's not stable yet!" More gunmen poured in, methodical and unyielding. Rafe popped up from behind the couch, returned fire with unmeasured bursts. One operative went down, but the others advanced quickly. They wore advanced body armour. The drones of war had arrived, cold and relentless. Suddenly Helena emerged from the side room with a small canister in hand. "Close your eyes," she shouted, tossing the device into the hallway. A deafening flash erupted, and a wave of disorientation flooded the area. The operatives stumbled, ears ringing. Rafe seized the moment, firing precise shots that forced them into retreat. "We have to go now!" Helena screamed. They scrambled out the back, smoke swirling around them. Sirens blared in the distance. Cambridge was about to light up with a full-blown incident. The team dashed through side alleys, hearts thundering, adrenaline in overdrive. Eventually they reached an abandoned parking lot where Helena's old nondescript hatchback waited. They piled in, slamming doors just as a black SUV swerved onto the street behind them. Rafe gunned the engine, the tyres squealing. The chase was on through narrow roads, weaving between startled pedestrians, until they hit the outskirts of town and roared onto the highway. In the car's rear view, Tyler spotted the black SUV finally lose ground, swerving away. but the sense of reprieve was fleeting. There was no doubt more teams were coming. Breathing hard, Helena clutched the disruptor to her chest. Now you see how serious they are. They'll burn down entire cities if it means covering this up. Tyler tried to steady himself, focusing on the road ahead. We have no choice. We push onward. To the Sentinel. An unspoken terror clung to them like a dark cloud. Global conflict was intensifying by the hour, engineered to sow chaos. The quantum device loomed in the Scottish Highlands, nearly complete, waiting to unleash catastrophe. And somewhere, the Overseer, ancient and inscrutable, watched and waited for humanity's next move. They drove north under a sky that turned from steel grey to an ominous patchwork of storm clouds, as though nature itself braced for an unfolding cataclysm. Tyler Wheeler, Dr. Helena Moore, Rafe DeLuca, and Ashley Winters knew they were racing against the clock, their every mile bringing them closer to the Sentinel, a secret fortress hidden deep within the Scottish Highlands. Despite the tension, the car ride gave them a shred of time to plan. Helena spent hours tinkering with the frequency disruptor's wiring, occasionally tapping Rafe's shoulder to ask about electromagnetic interference or structural resonance. Ashley manipulated stolen credentials and forged IDs on her laptop. Tyler tried to keep an eye on the rearview mirror, half expecting black SUVs or attack helicopters to burst out of the swirling mists. Their final approach to the Sentinel was a winding single-lane road overshadowed by pine forests. Helena explained that the facility predated the Cold War, originally built as a subterranean bunker. Over the past decade, Carlisle and General Pike had retrofitted it with alien-inspired technologies, turning it into the cradle of the reckoning. Rain hammered down by the time they parked near a chain-link fence hidden among the trees. Floodlights swept across the perimeter, illuminating barbed wire and turret-like security towers. "We'll never get in through the main gate," Rafe muttered. "We need to find an alternate entry." Ashley popped the trunk and rummaged for a handheld device that looked like a cross between a tablet and a satellite phone. "Sensor jammer," she explained. "Short range, but it should cloak our movement from standard detection grids for a few minutes at a time." They slipped through the sodden forest, keeping low. Rain soaked their clothes, and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. The fence was electrified. Lines hummed with lethal current. Helena attached a small clamp that neutralized the circuit for a few precious seconds, allowing them to cut through. Once inside, they found themselves on a narrow service road leading into the heart of the base. Patrol vehicle rolled by. They pressed themselves flat against the muddy ground, hearts pounding until its taillights disappeared into the darkness. Step by agonizing step, they neared a wide concrete entrance set into the hillside. A guard post stood under a harsh overhead light. Two armed soldiers in tactical gear chatted, clearly bored. Ashley crouched behind a boulder, hooking her sensor jammer into a small drone. "This will give us a short window." She launched the drone, and it floated silently behind the guard post. A flickering distortion rippled across the security cameras. The soldiers noticed something was off, but too late. Rafe darted forward, dispatching them with swift, silent takedowns. Tyler's stomach lurched. He'd never grown used to violence, but there was no turning back. They dragged the unconscious guards aside, scanning ID badges that Ashley reprogrammed on the spot. The heavy steel doors hissed open, revealing a long corridor lit by fluorescent tubes that buzzed like trapped insects. Inside, they encountered labyrinthine hallways, each leading to sealed chambers, labs, and offices. Helena led the way, occasionally stopping to check readouts on her disruptor. "We need the main reactor room. That's where the quantum device draws its power. If we can sever the resonance core, we can shut it down or blow it up if necessary." They passed through a corridor lined with thick glass windows showcasing bizarre equipment. Cylindrical tanks filled with luminescent fluid, twisted metallic structures pulsing with an eerie violet glow. Helena's face was tight with anger and regret. "They've refined everything we worked on. I never wanted it used like this." Suddenly an alarm wailed. Red lights flashed overhead. "They know we're here," Rafe hissed. The group sprinted through winding passages, narrowly dodging squads of armed personnel. Tyler's heart jackhammered in his chest. Every corridor felt like a trap. They ducked into a storage area, breath steaming in the chilled air. "Too many guards," Ashley panted. "We need a diversion." Helena nodded, checking her disruptor. "If I can overload one of these secondary nodes, it might temporarily knock out the base's power, but it'll bring them running." "That might be our only shot," Rafe agreed. They found a small sub-reactor control room behind a locked door. Ashley hacked the panel while the rest stood guard. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber lined with thick cables and server racks humming with unnatural energy. Helena hurried to the central console, her hand shaking slightly as she rewired circuits. "Cover me," she said, voice taut. Rafe and Tyler took defensive positions at the entrance, readying for the onslaught they were sure would come. Ashley hovered by Helena's side, occasionally pointing out system prompts. "Careful! You don't want to fry the wrong subsystem or we'll lose the disruptor feed." A distant thud signalled an approaching security detail. Another alarm blared, deeper in pitch, signalling a containment breach. The building shuddered, the early flickers of the sabotage. Helena gave a final twist to a cable and pressed a sequence of commands on the console. Sparks flew and a surge of energy rattled the entire chamber. Lights flickered out, replaced by dim emergency beacons. The base's deep hum faltered. "Now!" Helena yelled. They sprinted back into the corridor. Gunfire erupted from behind as security forces advanced with flashlights bobbing in the darkness. Rafe fired short, controlled bursts, forcing the soldiers to take cover. Tyler's lungs burned as they dashed down flights of metal steps, searching for the main reactor. Finally, they reached a massive chamber reminiscent of a nuclear silo, but laced with alien architecture. Towering columns pulsed with faint purple energy. In the centre, suspended by thick cables, hung a black sphere about 10 feet in diameter. Strange markings crawled across its surface, occasionally glowing in patterns that resembled script. "The quantum device," Helena breathed. "It's already primed." At that moment, footsteps thundered behind them. A phalanx of armed soldiers rushed in. Leading them was General Alexander Pike himself, garbed in tactical gear, face grim. Beside him stood Victor Carlyle in an immaculate suit, his hair slicked back, eyes gleaming with cold triumph. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, Wheeler," Carlyle said, voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "After all these centuries, did you really think a handful of renegades could stop this?" Pike raised a hand and the soldiers aimed their weapons. "Stand down, all of you. Hand over the disruptor." Rafe's grip tightened on his rifle. Ashley, panting, clutched her side. Tyler noticed Helena's gaze flick between Carlyle, the quantum device, and the cables overhead. Then a new presence emerged from the shadows, a tall, hooded figure with an unsettling aura. It wore a sleek, dark robe that seemed to shift in the dim light. Even from a distance, Tyler sensed its intelligence, ancient and inhuman, the Overseer. No one spoke as it drifted forward, each movement fluid, almost as if gravity had a different hold on it. When it finally spoke, the voice was neither masculine nor feminine, but a resonant chord that rattled the nerves. "You've come far, Tyler Wheeler," it said, turning its shrouded visage toward him. "Your ancestors helped sow the seeds of this new epoch. It is ironic you now seek to uproot them." Tyler felt a surge of nausea. What are you?" The Overseer's hood shifted, revealing only a vague shape. "We are the Watchers, the stewards of your species' evolution. This mission was born from the folly of man. but guided by us toward inevitable ascension. Carlyle stepped forward, his voice reverent. We are on the brink of a new age, guided by them. Humanity's petty squabbles end, and a more perfect order emerges. Helena's eyes blazed with defiance. You mean genocide, billions dead, just so a few can reign over the ruins? How is that evolution? The Overseer seemed to regard her coldly. Every world must choose its path. Some embrace order, others fall. We have chosen to guide those willing to see the necessity of sacrifice. Tyler's anger flared. That's not your choice to make. This is our world. Pike raised his weapon, muzzle trained on Tyler's chest. Sentimentality. We do what must be done. Time slowed. Helena's hand darted toward the disruptor, flipping a hidden switch. The device hummed. For an instant, Tyler wondered if it would even work. Then a burst of energy pulsed outward. The soldiers staggered, reeling from sudden feedback in their earpieces. Carlyle grabbed his temples, howling. The Overseer hissed. A spine-chilling sound. Sparks danced around the alien sphere, cables crackling. The entire chamber flickered, as if reality itself had been jolted. Rafe seized the moment, unleashing covering fire. The team dove behind large crates as bullets ricocheted. Pike shouted orders, but confusion reigned. Some of his men collapsed, disoriented by the disruptor's high-frequency wave. Carlyle stumbled, eyes wild. The Overseer glided backward, momentarily destabilized by the resonance. Helena frantically adjusted the disruptor's settings. One more surge might overload the device. It could destroy everything in here, including us. Tyler locked eyes with her. We have no choice. Do it. She recalibrated the disruptor, but a warning beep indicated critical instability. The quantum sphere pulsed dangerously, the alien markings flaring from purple to crimson. The hum intensified to a shriek. We have to detach the main cable, Helena shouted over the roar. Manual release, up there! She pointed to a high catwalk. Tyler didn't hesitate. He bolted for the nearby ladder, ignoring Rafe's shout to wait. Bullets whizzed by. He climbed, arms shaking. The metal catwalk swayed. Down below, the Overseer's robed form raised an elongated arm, emitting a bizarre energy wave that knocked several soldiers off their feet. Tyler reached the cable, a thick, pulsating conduit of alien alloy. A handle mechanism glowed, refusing to budge under normal force. Summoning every ounce of strength, he yanked on the release lever. At first, it held fast. Then, with a groan, the coupling burst free. The cable whipped about, sparks flying, and the quantum sphere's glow faltered. Below, the Overseer let out an unearthly wail, perhaps sensing the mission's unravelling. Pike cursed, levelling his weapon at Helena. Before he could fire, Rafe tackled him, the two men crashing into a tangle of cables. Carlyle, half-dazed, tried to flee, but Ashley's quick shot to his leg sent him sprawling, shouting in agony. The sphere flickered, light strobing dangerously. Overhead speakers crackled with a computerized warning. Catastrophic resonance imbalance detected. Evacuate immediately. Tyler scrambled down the ladder, nearly losing his footing as the catwalk lurched. The entire facility was in meltdown. White-hot arcs of energy crackled from the severed cable. Helena, disruptor in hand, rushed toward the sphere's control console, determined to deal the final blow. And then the Overseer moved with inhuman speed, crossing the chamber in seconds. Its robe flared, revealing slender, elongated limbs. It lashed out, striking Helena's arm. She cried out, dropping the disruptor. The device skittered across the floor, dangerously close to the swirling energies. Ashley scooped up a fallen rifle, firing in short bursts. Sparks danced along the Overseer's form. It recoiled, shuddering as if the bullets disrupted some protective field. Rafe, stumbling away from Pike's limp body, grabbed Helena, pulling her to safety. Tyler saw the disruptor lying amid debris, so close to the flickering cables that his hair stood on end from the static charge. He lunged for it, ignoring the searing pain in his fingertips as arcs of energy lashed out. He seized the disruptor. Helena's eyes met his, fear mingling with resolve. The sphere overhead raged, flickering between violet, red, and black. The entire facility thundered. Tyler jammed the disruptor into the console, pressing its manual override. A final deafening surge of feedback rocked the chamber. The sphere cracked like an egg, releasing a blinding burst of energy that blasted outward. Tyler's vision went white. When Tyler Wheeler's vision cleared, he found himself sprawled on the cold metal floor, ears ringing, and everything tinted in flickering red light. Smoke billowed from ruptured conduits, and sparks rained from shattered fixtures. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm droned like a dying animal. He forced himself upright, blinking away the haze. The quantum sphere now hung lifeless, fractured down its centre. Strange viscous fluid seeped from its cracked shell, steaming on the floor. Whatever energy it once harboured had been unleashed, or spent. The Overseer lay collapsed near the control console, its robe torn. Its elongated limbs twitched, attempting to stand but failing. The disruptor had done catastrophic damage to the device it had guided for centuries, and possibly to itself. Tyler felt a strange mixture of dread and pity as he watched the alien being struggle in vain. General Pike's body lay slumped against a pile of debris, silent. Victor Carlyle was pinned under a fallen girder, moaning and clawing at the air. One of his legs was twisted at an impossible angle. The once impeccable mogul now looked like a trapped animal. Rafe DeLuca, Helena Moore, and Ashley Winters emerged from behind a half-collapsed partition. Their clothes were singed, hair matted with sweat and dust, but they were alive. Helena clutched at her bruised arm while Ashley helped prop her up. Rafe, weapon still in hand, scanned the chamber for threats. "Tyler!" Rafe called, relief flooding his voice. "You all right?" Tyler coughed. "Been better." Helena hurried over to inspect the quantum device's remains, gingerly stepping through the wreckage. The sphere is cracked wide open. The resonance meltdown must have neutralized it. But the facility is unstable. We have to leave now. An ominous rumble echoed through the base. The overhead console flickered and spat out a computerized warning. Containment breach in progress, reactor meltdown imminent. Ashley's eyes widened. If the meltdown hits the deeper levels, it might trigger a bigger explosion or cause a chain reaction with whatever alien hardware is still active. Rafe nodded grimly. Can't let a massive blast go off here. Who knows what effect it might have on the region. The fallback plan was to sabotage the device, but we never planned for a meltdown of this scale. Helena's gaze darted to the broken disruptor. Might still be able to override the meltdown sequence from the main control station, but someone has to stay behind to operate it, and with the system in this state, it's basically a suicide mission. Tyler felt a surge of horror, but also a grim acceptance. And can't let the Highlands be contaminated, or worse. If this place blows with alien technology inside, it could ignite the geophysical nightmares we were trying to prevent. Ashley set her jaw. We'll do what we have to. Maybe we can set it on a timer. No time, Helena cut in, scanning the battered terminals. It has to be done manually. The meltdown sequence is locked behind multiple fail-safes. Before anyone could argue, Tyler stepped forward. I'll do it. Rafe shook his head fiercely. No. We came this far together, Tyler. We can find another way. But Tyler simply looked at the shattered sphere, the broken body of the Overseer, and the entire conspiracy that had nearly claimed the planet. He remembered all the revelations, centuries of manipulation, wars orchestrated, countless lives sacrificed. He thought of the legacy his own ancestors had played in paving the way for this mission. I started this, Tyler said, voice trembling with suppressed emotion. I stumbled on the truth, and all of you risked your lives. I can't ask you to stay. Besides, I'm the one who has to break this chain for good." Helena's eyes brimmed. She gently placed her uninjured hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Let me help you. I can at least show you which overrides to engage." Rafe and Ashley exchanged haunted looks, but knew time was short. The facility shuddered again, metal groaning. Over the PA system, a robotic voice droned, 90 seconds to meltdown. Across the chamber, Carlyle let out a pained shriek, still trapped. Rafe spared him a final glance. He's done. There's no saving him. They made their decision in a heartbeat. Ashley rummaged for any data or physical evidence they could carry out. Rafe helped Helena stand. Tyler steeled himself, stepping over shattered glass to reach a half-functional control station. "Tyler," Rafe said softly. "Thank you." Tyler nodded, swallowing hard. "Get out. Expose everything. Don't let them spin this." As Ashley and Rafe supported Helena, they broke into a run, heading back through the scorched corridors. Tyler's heart clenched, watching them go. For a fraction of a moment he considered following. But no, the meltdown had to be contained. He set to work on the console, sweat and soot dripping down his face. Helena had pointed out the meltdown override, a nest of controls with a final manual lever that would divert the reactor's energy into a sealed reservoir. The process would blow out the reservoir but keep the chain reaction from tearing through the rest of the facility. The overseer let out a rattling hiss, propping itself against a broken column. Tyler glanced over. He could feel the alien's disapproval and ageless malice in those half-obscured features. He pressed the override codes, lights flashing in frantic protest. A screen flickered. Manual release in T-45 seconds. He could barely hear the system voice over the collapsing ceiling panels and crackle of electricity. Summoning the last of his courage, Tyler slammed the final lever. Gears ground, sending shockwaves through the entire reactor chamber. He braced himself as a wave of scorching air rushed past, extinguishing the overhead lights. Rafe, Ashley and Helena sprinted through the base, dodging falling debris and leaping over collapsed walkways. The walls shook violently. Sections of the ceiling caved in, revealing a storm-lashed sky above. Rain poured through the jagged openings, sizzling on superheated machinery. They barely made it out the main entrance before it groaned and buckled. The hillside itself seemed to cave, swallowing half the structure into a sinkhole of twisted steel and burning rubble. A blast of wind knocked them off their feet. Dust and debris swirled in a maelstrom of chaos. When the roar subsided, they looked back at the partially sunken facility. Smoke and flickering fires dotted the landscape, but it didn't appear the meltdown had spread beyond the immediate site. Tyler had done it. He'd contained the explosion, sacrificing himself so that billions could live free from alien-imposed catastrophe. Helena sank to her knees, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "He saved us all," she whispered, her voice breaking. Rafe bowed his head, fists clenched in silent rage and sorrow. Ashley gently rested a hand on Helena's shoulder, eyes full of a grief that mirrored both loss and relief. Their reprieve was shattered by the sound of helicopter rotors. For a heartbeat they tensed, expecting another wave of conspirators. But the craft bore UN markings. Word of the meltdown must have spread, or perhaps local authorities reported an explosion. The battered trio steeled themselves to reveal the truth. News outlets around the world lit up with rumours of a mysterious explosion in the Scottish Highlands. Official statements from various governments contradicted each other, some claiming it was a natural gas pocket, others hinting at a rogue military test. Yet the infiltration team, Rafe, Helena and Ashley, quietly reached out to trusted journalists, whistleblowers, and international watchdogs. Carlyle Holdings collapsed under scandal. Evidence of illegal arms dealings, financial manipulations, and covert warmongering surfaced. Victor Carlyle, found half dead at the site, lay in a military hospital under heavy guard, facing charges of treason and crimes against humanity. General Pike was declared dead, his involvement in a global conspiracy overshadowing any national accolades he once held. Documents and data leaked by Ashley exposed the centuries-old infiltration by an alien alliance. Though many dismissed the claims as outlandish, enough evidence forced governments worldwide to confront uncomfortable questions. Rumours circulated of covert hearings at the UN, top brass called to testify in closed-door sessions. In the public domain, the Anglo-Saxon mission was dismissed by official sources as a fringe conspiracy theory. But behind closed doors, it caused a seismic shift in global politics. The nuclear tensions orchestrated by Carlyle and Pike's conspirators began to subside, the world's eyes struggling to refocus on the possibility that humanity had nearly been manipulated into its own extinction. Helena Moore, scarred but resolute, worked with an underground team of scientists to ensure that any further traces of alien technology were either neutralized or disclosed. Ashley Winters continued her hacking crusade, systematically dismantling hidden networks the conspirators had set up over decades. Rafe DeLuca, haunted by Tyler's sacrifice, quietly formed a new coalition of free agents dedicated to rooting out what remained of the mission's influence. The lingering question was whether the Overseer truly perished in the meltdown. Some whispers suggested it might have escaped, or that others of its kind still lurked in hidden enclaves, waiting to resume the grand experiment. In a world rife with secrets, only time would tell if humanity's brush with annihilation was truly over. On a drizzly afternoon, Rafe stood at the edge of a modest memorial in a secluded part of the English countryside, an unmarked stone beneath a towering oak. He placed a single flower there, water droplets running off the petals. "This was the least we could do," Helena said softly, joining him. Ashley lingered nearby, eyes downcast. Rafe nodded, voice gruff with emotion. Tyler Wheeler believed in the truth. He believed that no matter how vast the conspiracy, or how powerful the oppressors, standing up for what's right mattered. Because if no one does, we lose our humanity. Helena placed her hand on the stone. He changed everything. In the end, we exposed them. We're still here, still fighting, and we have Tyler to thank for that. A breeze rattled the leaves overhead, as though echoing that sentiment. They stood in silence, letting their grief mingle with gratitude. None of them knew if the Overseer's threat was truly gone, or if a new shadow would rise to replace it. But they did know that Tyler's legacy would carry on in every act of resistance against the hidden forces that sought to mould the world in their own image. As they turned to leave, the clouds parted just enough for a brief shaft of sunlight to illuminate the stone. Perhaps it was a coincidence of weather, or perhaps something more profound. A small sign that in the unending struggle between darkness and light, hope still found a way to endure.